What's up, everybody? Healthy Living Podcast, episode 10. I'm with Mr. Matthew. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
So for everyone who doesn't know, just give us a background of yourself and yeah.
Cool. I had to chuckle a little bit because Mr. Matthew, I haven't heard that for a while. I haven't heard that in over a year now. So
you've been out of teaching for a year?
Yeah, it's been a little bit over a year. Happens fast. It's like what 15 months or something like that, almost a year and a half now. So I'm Lucian Matthew. So I was a Sutton, Mr. Huggins' former English teacher, 8th grade, I believe, right?
Yep.
8th grade English teacher. So I was born and raised here in Las Vegas, left to UNR for college, came back, went to UNLV, got my master's in curriculum and instruction, and became a school teacher at Slam Academy of Nevada. But I've always had a passion. I think the reason I'm on here is because I'm someone who follows those passions. And one of my initial passions right out of school, out of college, I guess you could say, or still while I was getting my bachelor's degree, was to become a firefighter. And, things fell into place and I got my opportunity my 4th year into teaching right before, just as COVID hit, actually. It was about like maybe a year into COVID, 2020-ish. And so I took that opportunity, went to my interview, went to the Fire Academy, and now I'm a firefighter for the Clark County Fire Department.
So what did they just reach out to you and were they like, we have an opportunity, or like, did you apply? Like, did you reach out to them? How'd that work?
Yeah. So right when I moved back to Vegas from college, from Reno, I started applying. I applied, I tested, I interviewed, and I tested fairly well, but I didn't get the final interview, the Chiefs interview. So I just waited. I didn't hear back. And in the meantime, I started working some EMT jobs because I was an EMT basic. So there's 3 levels. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. 3 levels. There's EMT basic, EMT advanced, and then a paramedic, all of which are the pre-qualifications to become a fireman. So working as an EMT basic, it's tough. It's a challenging job. The pay isn't very well. I wasn't able to support the future of a family with that career, with that job. So the firefighting was the only route if I stayed in that career field. But, coming from a family of educators, my dad was a principal here in Las Vegas. And my mom was a teacher also for 30 years each. I said, well, I might as well get into the family business. I went to college for it. That's why I got my bachelor's was in English. So I started teaching. And I don't want to say I closed the door on firefighting after I didn't hear back. I just kind of went down a new path and wasn't really looking back as frequent. But I kept all of my certifications up to date. So I said, whenever that opportunity does come, if it comes, I'll be prepared for it. And then just my luck, it did come around. So I actually tested in, I want to say about 2018, and about 2 years had gone by before I eventually got an email for my Chiefs interview. So I was pretty fortunate with that.
And testing, as in, do you have to take a written test? Is it a physical test?
Yeah, so there's multiple levels to the testing. Initially, it's a written test, and that's open to the public. Anyone can apply and take that. It's a written test as long as you meet the qualifications. But it's pretty competitive. You want to score definitely closer to that 100% marker, 95 and above. You're competing against everyone who's testing. So could be up in thousands of people test. Once you take that test, you can advance. Then you'll take what's called the CPAT. It's a physical portion. It's just kind of like a general baseline. Are you able to do some of the basic things that firefighters do on a daily basis? Climb stairs, carry equipment, do so with a weighted vest on because you're going to have your own equipment on, saws, axes, that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it's extremely difficult, but something that many people do have to spend a fair amount of time preparing for. And once you have the written and the CPAT, then you get the interview. You can sit down in front of somebody and tell them what your story is and give them, and basically sell yourself. Once you have that interview, that dictates whether you go on to either a Chiefs interview or a panel interview where there's multiple people, typically a few Chiefs there, and then they give you the yay or nay. If you get the yay or nay from there, if you get the yay, then you'll go into the Fire Academy. And that's what is, you will hear many stories about the Fire Academy. It's a very difficult, challenging mentally, physically, emotionally, all the above for about 6 months. Most academies are 6 to 7 months.
And what happens in the fire academy? Like, do you go on the job? Do you shadow? Like, what kind of goes on there?
So what happens is you have a like a panel of what we call them cadre.
Mhm.
So firefighters, engineers, and captains, a variety of all from your department who take time off serving the public, serving the community, and spend that time with you in the academy. And they teach you the ways of that fire department. So they teach you how to pull hose, what different types of hoses are on the apparatuses, what type of apparatuses we have. We spend the majority of our day, or maybe about 50% of the day actually, in the classroom, taking tests every day, learning every day, and then we'll spend the rest of that time applying those lessons that we've learned out on the training ground. So majority of the day will be at the training center, and then towards the end of the academy, we'll do off-campus or off-site activities, climbing stairs. We climb the stratosphere multiple times in my academy. Different hotels will climb the stairs and prepare for things. We'll go look at different housing complexes, apartment complexes, and say if there was a fire here, we'll run some different scenario-based activities. And then towards maybe the last 2-3 weeks of the academy, they'll start to plug us in at different stations as ride-alongs and say, hey, this is going to be your career here pretty soon in the next few weeks. Can you handle it, and do you have what it takes? So yes, you do get to do a little ride-along experience, but before they put you out there in the community, they want to make sure that you have that baseline of understanding the fundamentals of the job.
And what did you do to prepare for the job, as like once you got accepted and they were like, you got the job? Did you do any like preparing on your own?
Yeah, I definitely did. I knew that it was going to be physically demanding, and I'm someone who I take physical and exercise, those kind of abilities seriously. So
Mhm.
I went to the gym. I pushed a lot harder than I typically would. I've done different types of functional athletic training, CrossFit, football throughout my entire life. So I was making sure I stayed healthy, making sure I wasn't getting injured. But like I said, I hit the gym sometimes twice a day, doing different CrossFit workouts twice a day. So at least I knew that the physical portion of the academy wouldn't be as daunting of a task or as heavy on me as it would someone else who perhaps didn't prepare as much. But like I said, that's only a fraction of what's demanded of you in the academy. There's still everyday studying, test taking. Just to tell you how challenging it can be, we had, I want to say, close to 23 chapters in my book, if I'm not mistaken, give or take. And if you failed more than 2 tests, you were kicked out, and a failure is 80% or below. So if you got a 79 on 3 tests, you were asked to leave the academy. And it didn't matter if it was week 1 or if that was week 20.
So comparing it to college, because you also have a master's degree, are they comparable, or?
That's a good question. It's a good question. I would say it's very different. In the fire department, I would say it was a different type of learning. Having my degree, I thought, okay, maybe the studying, having my degree has prepared me for all the studying that I was going to be doing, which it did. I had some already good study habits, but it's a lot different. What I went to school for to become a teacher, it was very like personable, people related. How could I understand my material as an English teacher? It was really like, here's the topic or the subject matter. How well can I internalize it and like make it my own and go teach it? Versus the fire department is, here's the book. This is your Bible. Can you repeat this Bible? Can you recite every page? Can you remember these words? So, it wasn't the same kind of learning, but we had I would say, similar experiences between the two, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so when like you went through a 6-month training to become an actual firefighter, did what you learned in that 6 months translate to being on the actual job? Like, are they comparable?
Absolutely. We spend a lot of time with really good firefighters. The people that they select to teach us in the academy are not just, average Joes. They're guys who are dedicated to not just the fire service, but also to teaching. So that was super helpful. I saw the passion that they had when they were teaching it to us, and it made me passionate about it.
Mhm.
So absolutely, it translates over. I would say there was something called the bookway where we had to be signed off. Like there's OSHA and different regulations that say, or NFPA, that firefighters must be able to do this way in order to maintain safety, which is huge. So we'll learn that as our baseline first, and then kind of to answer your question, there's always like okay, now here's the on the job way to do it. This is the
Mhm.
faster, more efficient way to do it. But now
Right.
we have both ways. So yeah, I would say they all, for the most part, correlate over. Absolutely.
And what goes into like what's a day in the life of a firefighter look like?
Good question. It depends on your station. It absolutely depends on your station. I would say what's expected of a younger firefighter, so someone that's in my shoes, X amount of years or less. It could be 5 years or less, 10 years or less, or just really how aggressive that you want to be as a fireman. Depending on what part of the city you work in, dictates how your day's going to go. I've been on the strip. I've been at one of the busiest stations in the nation, Fire Station 32, which is right by the Aria and the Cosmopolitan, right on the strip
Mhm.
on Las Vegas Boulevard, where there's some nights where we barely slept. And I mean, we ran 27 calls in a day. So if you do the math on that, that's more than a call in an hour. So every hour.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a 24-hour period. So what you can expect is to be at the station for a 24-hour period. Our shift goes from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. Um, but the culture of the fire department's like none other. We get there at 6 a.m. every day. So even though we're not getting paid till 8, we have 2 hours before where we're doing chores, preparing to start our day. So when 8 a.m. comes, we've already been there for 2 hours preparing for 8 a.m. So it's definitely a culture and a switch when it comes to being a firefighter, a switch from like being a teacher, from really any other job out there. But you have to be um, prepared for a lot of different things. So things that you're going to see on the job, we see and do things that most people only see in movies. And I thought at first, I was like, yeah, I want to run into a burning building. I want to save that little baby, or I want to go
Mhm.
climb that tree and get the cat. And we definitely do have those opportunities. But I wouldn't say that's like an everyday thing. A lot of our day is helping the community, saving people, not saving people, but talking to people,
Mhm.
educating the public, and just saying, hey, this is what can be expected of us. And, if you have a problem, this is how we're going to handle it. And we're going to be as professional as possible about it. So, yeah, it's a fun job.
And so like what are you typically like I know like there's not a lot of burning houses as like you getting into it, you're like, oh, a firefighter goes to a burning house and puts out the fire and saves the people. And I know that's not necessarily reality. Like what other calls, what do you typically respond to? What's like most of your calls like?
Majority of our calls, I would say fairly 90%. I think the stats like 80s to 90% of our calls are EMS related, emergency medical services. So,
Mhm.
which is why a prerequisite has to be, we need to be either an EMT or a paramedic. For the
Mhm.
Clark County Fire Department, you have to be an advanced EMT or a paramedic before you can be considered. So that means it's like similar to the ambulance company. We arrive, those are our partners. We'll arrive on scene with them, sometimes shortly before or shortly after them, and we'll help that person who is choking. Or it goes from anything from someone who has a headache to a cardiac arrest, where we're doing CPR on scene. So it varies from everything in between there. So those are majority of our calls every day.
And what's the schedule look like? Like, are you working 24 hours on Monday and then you get Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then you work Thursday, Friday? Like, what's that schedule look like?
So it's different based on each department, and there's a big study that's been going on for years that like how can firefighters be most beneficial to the public based off of our sleep schedule, because the thing that they say kills the most amount of firefighters isn't fires and isn't this, that, and the third, but it's sleep deprivation because
Mhm.
we're up all night, especially at some of these busy stations. Sleep deprivation leads to cancer. Sleep deprivation leads to a lot of other things. And they found that cancer was a major killer of firemen. They used to think, oh, it's because of all the toxins that we're exposed to, which is 100% true. But they say that cancer is able to develop a lot faster due to our sleep deprivation. So our schedule, and it's the only schedule that I've worked, but it's 24 hours on, 24 hours off. So we have a whole day to recover. And we'll do that for 5 shifts. So if you do the math, that's 10 days where we work every other day. And then after those 10 shifts, we have 6 days off. So that's the schedule that Clark County has. But I know like the city of Las Vegas Fire Department, they do like, I want to say it's 48 hours on and then 4 days off. 2 days on, 4 days off, 2 days on, 4 days off. So depending on your department, it varies. That's definitely something that before you start applying, you want to look into to see if that work schedule fits your schedule as well.
And is it paid by the hour? Or are you making a salary or?
Yeah, it's an hourly dollar figure. And each department is paid slightly different. And then also you want to make sure you take a look at your benefits package, because your healthcare, health insurance, life insurance, that kind of thing that's provided is also slightly different depending on which department you go with.
And getting promoted, because I know you can obviously get promoted. What's that like look like? Are there like certain qualifications you have to become? What are the rankings, and what's that look like?
Yeah. So we have firefighter, then engineer. Engineer is the apparatus operator, so the fire truck or the fire engine or the fire rescue or squad. Those are the 4 that we have on our department. They'll be the operators, they'll be the drivers of those. And then we have our captain and then a battalion chief. And above the battalion chief is we have it gets kind of more complicated, but we have multiple chiefs that are involved in different sectors, different sections. And then eventually when you get to the very top, we have the chief. So C1, as we call him, Chief Steinbeck, John Steinbeck. But I would say that promotions and matriculating through the fire department is highly expected, but also motivated. People want you to promote as soon as possible. And when you're also ready, because going from firefighter to engineer, we have an engineers academy that gets put on that's free to everyone that takes it. You go on your days off, you take the academy, and then you test. And basically there's a list off your ranking. And once the time for hiring comes around, they go right off that list, first all the way down to however many they need. If that list gets exhausted, everyone gets promoted, or maybe they only needed 5 people off that list, then you'll do another list. They'll retest and rescore and then keep going. And the same goes for captain and the same goes for chief. It's all very similar in the process, but everybody helps you. Everyone wants you to be successful on those tests.
And when you get hired to a station, do you go to like the one that's nearest to you, or do you move around? Are you like positioned at one completely, or do you move around?
So when you first, what we call hit the floor, when you first get onto the fire department, which I did about a little less than a year ago, a little over a year now, but you are a rover. So meaning you'll go from station to station as needed. Eventually though, you find a station that you like, you find a crew that you like, that you mesh with, and you can do what's called bidding that station. So once that station has an availability, you can place your bid and say, hey guys, typically in our culture, you call the captain and say, hey, captain, I really enjoyed working with you that last time. Is it okay if I bid your station? And they'll be like, absolutely, come on over. We'd love to have you. But everything is off of seniority. So if I want to bid a station that is a very busy, fun, positive learning environment type of a station where I'm going to be getting quality calls and a lot of experience between fire and EMS, typically those stations are highly sought after. So other people are going to want to bid them as well. So say if I graduated from the class of 20-2, it was the second academy in 2020. So someone above me or someone who graduated before me, if they want to bid that station also based off seniority, they would get that bid. So it all just comes down to station availability. And if it works out in your favor, then it does. If not, you just keep trying at a later date. So definitely something to keep an eye out for.
And so what's a super busy day look like compared to like a not so busy day?
Yeah. So like I said, like one of my busier days was 27 calls in one day. That's, arriving on scene, either transferring those patients to the ambulance company or sometimes taking them to the hospital ourselves, speaking with those families and letting them know what's happening to the patient. or even going on fire calls. If we're turning out in our firefighter gear and we have a fire in a hotel or a fire in a apartment complex or a house, those are those busy days. Some of our slower days are maybe, it's hard to say whether it's like, oh, it's a weekend, we're going to be busy. There's been Sundays, Tuesdays, whatever days where we're super busy or super slow. So on a slower day, you're going to spend a little bit more time at the station, getting to know your crew a little bit better, the guys that you work with on a personal level. This job is like no other, because we live with these guys. We live with our coworkers. You might see your coworker for 8 hours a day, where we have to eat with them. We sleep in dorms, just almost like a college dorm in a sense, but we have our own private areas and stuff. But we cook together, we watch TV together, we exercise together, have activities together. So on some of our slower days, we'll spend a lot more time with the guys.
Interesting. So if you could sit down and you were to weigh out the pros and cons, what would be some of the pros and what would be some of the cons?
Yeah, so I would say the pros of this career is the ability to help people. And that's honestly what I got into teaching for. I wanted to, yes, it was a family career. Both of my parents were in it. So I knew that this was something that I could be successful at. But at the end of the day, it was just helping people, helping students achieve their goals through English, and seeing you guys, even you, being successful in my classroom growing up, and now look at you doing interviews with all different types of people. I have another student who's going to Stanford, who was in my 8th grade class. Watching you guys grow up has been my life's pleasure. I feel like even if I had some small role, or even if they say, oh, I remember Mr. Matthew, I don't remember what he taught me, but I remember he was a good guy and he motivated me. I'm happy at night. I can go to sleep knowing that. And with the fire department, I can still say the same thing. Some people might not know me by name because my interaction is so much smaller, but I hope that if I do my job and I do it well, the impact will be the same for those people. So that's something that I take very dearly, and I'm very happy. That's probably the best part of my job every day, knowing I can go to bed, go home, and I hopefully help make someone's life a little bit easier, a little bit better. The downfall, geez, it's hard. This job doesn't have a lot of downfalls. It's a good job. It really is a good job. It takes care of me financially, emotionally. I know that I don't have a family. I don't have a wife or a kid or anything like that, but I'm able to build the foundation for those things now, which as a teacher, which I feel teaching is the best job in the world. A lot of people say firefighting is, but for those who have done both, being able to see you guys every day and have an impact on students' lives was one of the best experiences I've ever had. But firefighting, like I said, I can get that experience also, but it's just better knowing that I can also support myself financially, where as a teacher, it was a little bit more difficult to do that. But yeah, I don't know if I have a downfall for firefighting, at least not yet. I'm still new into it. So
Yeah. And so earlier you said like responding to a fire call is different than responding to like a car accident, for instance, as far as, gear. Do you guys always fully dress out, or do you guys have a different attire for different occasions?
yeah, I would say different attire for different occasions. We have our EMS gear, which is still, it's a Nomex material, so it's still fire resistive. We'll typically wear that underneath what we call our turnout gear, which is the typical firefighter like ensemble you'll see with our helmet and our heavy jackets and stuff. Obviously, those are for fire calls, but there's a lot of different like protective layers to those. They're cut proof. They're not like bulletproof or anything like that. But if we go to a vehicle accident or like a major car accident and someone needs to be extricated and we have to cut that car open, we're going to put those turnout pants and turnout jackets on, so we have that extra very thick layer where we can do our job and not have to worry about getting cut by like shrapnel if something were to pop off or anything like that. So yeah, EMS calls, we have our EMS gear, and then fire and everything else, we have our fire gear for that. So.
And do you know what you're getting into before you get there, or
yes,
briefly, or what?
Yeah, so when we're dispatched to a call straight away from the station, we have what's called the voice lady comes overhead, and it with just a recording that tells us what we're going to. So if it's an EMS call, it could say stroke or seizure. It could say gunshot wound or laceration, or it could say car accident. It will say fire or building fire. So we'll know based off of that. And then as soon as we get into the rig or into the apparatus, whatever we're on, the engine or the truck or the rescue, there's notes from the dispatcher, which is awesome. So my hat goes off to our dispatchers out there. I feel like those are the people who don't really get a lot of recognition because you don't really see their faces, but they're the person that you speak to when you call 911, and they're translating everything into our notes. So before we get on scene, we have a general idea or a very accurate idea of what exactly we're getting ourselves into. And those guys potentially save thousands of lives every year. So having accurate notes before we get on scene is a huge help, because we know what we need to wear. What are we getting into as far as like, is this a domestic dispute where the aggressor has left and we can just go in and make sure this person gets help? Or is that aggressor on scene and they're barricaded with a gun? And next thing we do is we go in, hey, fire department, open that door, and there someone is with a gun. And now we're not going home that day. So thanks to those dispatchers sifting and sorting through all those calls, we're able to do our job a little bit more effectively. And they're the ones who will get Metro out on scene and get different agencies to come and support us. And we're one of those agencies where we can support the call or the community, whatever happens to be the issue.
And the dispatcher can determine who he or she dispatches. So it's not every call is going to everybody. It's
Right.
like she's sending it to just the fire department or just the police or whatever it is.
Correct. Yeah. So typically when you call, they'll say, do you need police, fire, or medical? If the person says just police, this is a police only situation, they'll send just the Metro, just our Metro Police Department. But then after they're getting more information, listening to the notes, and maybe they say, hey, I just need Metro, but like maybe a few minutes into that conversation, they say, you know, this person might also be injured. Then they're going to send the fire department also to check on that person who's possibly injured. If we get on scene and there's really no injury, nothing to do here, we'll talk to the patient, make sure everything's clear, and then we'll leave and we'll give the scene back over to Metro, and Metro can handle it from there. Sometimes Metro gets on scene and they say, oh, this person needs to be looked at. Let's give fire a call. We'll come out there with our ambulance company, and if they need medical attention, we'll give it to them and take them to the hospital. If not, like I said, we'll give it right back over to Metro, and vice versa. We've gotten on scene before. We're like, whoa, this is not safe, or this is not clear. You know, dispatcher will call on the radio. We need Metro over here to help us out, and they'll send Metro right away. So that's super helpful as well.
So I know, like, when you think of a firefighter, there's like this thought of like when they get a call, you know, everybody's up and they're sliding down the fire pole. What's like when you get a call, what's like a general, what happens after that? Is it like you're on a sense of urgency, like you got to go now? Is it like, you know, okay, let's go? Like, are you sprinting? Are you jogging? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah. So every there you'll see a little bit of a difference, but every call is urgent. Every call is an urgency. You have to move with sense of urgency. We have what's called like fire ground pace, where we don't want to be necessarily sprinting on scene of a fire and now we become part of the problem, right? If we're sprinting and we're running with our head cut off and we go into the wrong room, that could be chaotic for everybody on scene. Or if we do something that we shouldn't have done because we're not thinking properly. So you'll see every firefighter on a fire ground, typically walking, but walking with a sense of urgency. And that's what we call a fire ground pace. And I would say majority of calls that come across from the station, it's the same mentality. Whether we're sitting down, eating dinner, you put your food down, you put your plate down, and you go. Usually if there's other guys at the station, we have each other's back. It's a brotherhood. They'll wrap our food up for us. They'll put maybe some tinfoil or saran wrap. Hopefully it stays warm for us. And if it doesn't, that's a regular day in the life. I can't tell you how many times we've cooked great meals, steak and chicken and everything else. And as soon as you go in for that first bite, there's a call. There's no, hey, let me just finish this leg, you know, because at the end of the day, someone has an emergency that they felt the need to call 911 over, and we're there to respond. So when we get there, whether it's they need a doctor, a lawyer, or a paramedic, we're going to do our best to solve that situation. Doesn't matter what we have waiting for us back at the station. But I have been at some stations where You get those tones that go off, and it will say fire or building fire or whatever the case is. And yeah, you definitely put a little extra pep in your step, because that's, those fire tones go off. You know that you're limited on time, just like every other call. But yeah, I've had some calls where I've definitely sprinted a little bit to that engine, because I want to turn out real quick. I want to get all my gear on. I want to listen to those notes. I want to find out where this fire is. The more time I have to think about those kind of things, the better I feel like I'll be when we arrive on scene. So yeah, I'm guilty of sprinting to the engine once or twice. So there's no poles anymore, unfortunately. Those are all just for show now. And in the movies, I think there's one station, Fire Station 1, that still has a fire pole in it. But yeah, for the most part, there's no poles. We're all one story structures, at least for the fire department for Clark County. So.
And when, like, I know, like, sometimes ambulances, they have like a time where they are like, we got to get there within this time to make like a good time. Do you guys have what's your guys' time you're aiming for to arrive?
Well, it depends on the arrival, but we should be receiving the call and leaving the barn, which is where we store our apparatuses, like our garage, if you will, within, I believe it's 2 minutes, 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Excuse me. So that's, and that's sometimes 2 minutes is kind of the maximum. Usually we're gone before that, but that time frame is there because for a variety of reasons, whether it's in the middle of the night and you're getting out of bed and you have to get prepared and get dressed, or maybe you were in the shower or using the restroom. It doesn't matter. Those calls come, and they come at every time of the day. So we have that time frame to leave, but based on where it is location wise, there's not really like a set time of us having to be there. But every call that is what we would call code 3, like lights and sirens, urgent, you're going to get the wee woo, we're going there quickly, obviously, but traffic is a factor, weather is a factor, all these other factors that you see on our daily basis of driving in 5 o'clock traffic, we have to deal with those as well. So just because we have lights and sirens doesn't mean we get to like teleport to that call, even though we wish we could, but we still have those factors. So yeah, that's why there's not really a time frame from leaving the station to getting to the call. But if it's delayed for whatever reason, we absolutely will let our dispatcher know that, hey, we're going to be delayed for X, Y, and Z. There's a huge traffic accident. There's whatever. And they'll send another unit coming from a different direction to help us out with that call.
And that brings up a good point. So let's say you guys are on the way to let's say a car accident, and you see another car accident. How's that work? Like if you're on the way and you see another accident or fire or whatever it is.
Yeah, so that's happened. And it's kind of a judgment call. It's at the captain's discretion. Our captain has a lot of training and a lot of experience to become a captain. It's not something that you don't get a captain's badge or the title of officer or company officer, without being put through those type of scenarios. So they have more training on what call we're going to take versus what call we might give up. And it just depends. I've been in the station one time where we got a call for an EMS call. I think it was someone had a headache or something like that. The barn door opened up, and right in front of us, we saw smoke and fire. And it was like, whoa, we didn't even get the call for this yet. So my captain got on the radio and said, hey, send the next closest unit to that call. There's a fire right here in front of us. We need to handle this right now. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for us to drive past a fire to go somewhere else and then have other people come to that call. So it all just depends on where you're at geographically, how long it's going to take other units to get there, and what type of call it is. So.
And you also brought up, like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, sleeping, going to the bathroom, showering. Do you guys have different attire for the time of day? So like, whereas like, say 8 a.m. when you start to like, average time to go to bed, do you change, or do you sleep in a specific attire to expedite what you're doing?
I will say, even since I've been on the department, which hasn't been that long, in retrospect, we do 30 years in the fire department. So me having less than 2 years is a blink of an eye. Throughout our day, 8 a.m. when we arrive, or 6 a.m. when we actually get there, to, they say now 5 o'clock, 5 p.m., like business hours, we are in our attire, which is long pants, typically boots, and our uniform, which is we wear a t-shirt uniform. We have different uniforms depending on the scenario, but typically in our day to day, we just have our uniform T-shirt and our long pants. So we'll be in that at the station all day from 9 to 5. And then some stations, if you are not sleeping, you're in that attire typically all day long. But there's been this new wave of, okay, hey, it's after 5 p.m. We're allowed to wear shorts, like basketball shorts that are still company or still from our department issued shorts that you can buy from like a uniformity store. But yeah, so like I said, it kind of depends. Sometimes you can wear shorts, but you're always wearing that same uniform T-shirt. There's never going to be a scenario where you're dressed in your civilian clothes like I am now, and now I have to go change my clothes, because that's now delaying the process, delaying the call. So at the very most, you might have to just put on some long pants and your boots, and then now you're gone out the road. So.
And do you guys have like a closet where you store the gear, or is the gear on the fire truck, or how's that work?
Yeah, so we do have locker rooms in our dorms. If we need to change our clothes, if we need to change our pants, if for whatever reason we have like biomaterial that gets on it, and our shirts, we always have multiple change of shirts, so that way we're presentable to the public whenever we go on those calls. But yeah, our gear, I would say 95% of our gear is already on the engine or already on the truck. So all we have to do is hear those tones go off, and we just get to the truck. We have one job: get there, and we'll change there. So like you'll see, one thing that I started doing as a fireman is I start looking, whenever I see a fire truck go by, I start looking inside, and I say, what are those guys doing in the back? So as the driver, his job is to drive, and as the captain, his job is typically to navigate. There's a computer where they can navigate the call or talk to dispatch. But it's always the two guys who are firefighters that are sitting in the back. I started saying, okay, what are they doing? And as I would look inside, if they were sitting back in a T-shirt, I say, okay, they're going to an EMS call. But if I see them standing up, changing frantically, I know that there's a fire somewhere that they're going to, because they're in the back and they're putting on their turnout gear, they're putting their helmets on, and they're putting all their gear on. So I know that there's a fire. So based off of what those guys are doing in the back will tell you a lot about where that vehicle is going.
And wait, so you guys put on your turnout gear on in the truck, or does that vary from situation to situation, or?
Majority of the time it's in the back seat. Sometimes depending on the height of the vehicle, because all of our apparatus is a little bit different. So if you're a taller person, you might change on the outside and then jump in your seat, as long as you can do that very quickly. I've done both ways. The preferred method is outside, get in, put your seatbelt on, and then go to the call. But there's, sometimes where you have to do what you have to do. We have our air packs. We have two different types of cabs now in the back, which is a clean cab, or like your typical average cab. Clean cab means that all of our gear that's exposed to fire is kept in a different compartment. That's another move to keep firefighters healthy and safe, where we're not bringing in those carcinogens that cause cancer. Now we're sitting around it all day long. So it's been beneficial, it's been helpful, but it also adds an extra step, because now we get on scene, we're here, there's the fire, but now we got to get out and put some more gear on. So it delays the process a little bit. So some guys love it, some guys don't. We're still filling out which is the best. It's going to be a long time before we see the results of hey, this improves firefighters' health by this amount, and whether it's beneficial or not. We haven't gotten all those results just yet. So, but either way, whether we're turning out in the back or you're turning out outside the truck, it's still an expedited process. We're not, taking our time doing that.
And so, what's the craziest fire situation you've been in? Like, have you seriously had to run into a burning house and pull civilians out, or is that kind of like a fairy tale that's not as frequent as you'd think?
No, it definitely happens. I haven't had that experience yet. The fires that I have been on, majority of people have already evacuated. I think the most that we've had is hey, our dog is in there, our cat is in there, and we've had to do search for those animals. But like I said, just because I haven't had it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And we hear stories about it all the time in our fire department of, hey, this person had to grab, this person had to save somebody. They threw a ladder to get someone out of a window. So it definitely happens. But like I said, depending on the station, depending on location, those calls can be few and far between. It just kind of depends. So.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because I interviewed somebody last week who's the CEO of the supplement company I partner with, and he brought up CrossFit and how he's like really big into CrossFit, and he's like, through CrossFit, I'm able to have like the muscular capacity to do a lot of extended movements while also building strength and cardio at the same time. And then he related it to being able to run in to a house and save somebody, because and then take them out, rather than like somebody who like can bench press a lot and back squat a lot. That's just static lifting, so you're not really doing the same thing as CrossFit as far as cardio, and where you're building capacity for your muscles to withstand that. And so I thought I'd ask that because he brought it up last week.
Absolutely. Cardio is huge on this job. And you'll see there's two different types of firefighters, and some could argue three, so a well-rounded one, where we have guys who are super big, super muscular, and we need those guys. We have a lot of heavy equipment. Our axes, we have so many different saws and different tools at our disposal. But then we also have guys who are very thin, super skinny. And I'm like, man, these guys haven't even lifted any weights, but you see them on a fire, you see them during training and stairs, where their cardiovascular capacity is through the roof. So they're able to, whenever other people with all these muscles get tired and have muscle fatigue, these guys are still going. I haven't decided whether or not which is better or if there is a better, but my goal through CrossFit is to be able to do both. I want to be successful at weightlifting and also successful cardio wise, because I know that directly correlates to my job. Before, a lot of people, I think, lift weights and do activities to look fit or look good for Instagram, look good for social media or pool season or whatever it is. Obviously that's a benefit, but I lift now because I want to be able to do my job, and I want to be able to do my job well. I know that the difference between, for any athlete out there, that last rep, is whether you get it or not. And that's like maybe more mental for people, but the difference for me, that last rep could be somebody's life. If I can't do that last rep, if I can't make that last run or that last call or that last grab or whatever it is. So I train now with like a little bit of a different mentality, and I go to work prepared for those scenarios because I've also been trained for them. So my hat goes off to my cadre who trained me, even though I haven't had that scenario where I've had to save someone out of a burning building, I know when that time comes, I'll be prepared for it.
So what is the craziest story you have so far, a year and a half in?
I don't have too many crazy ones worth repeating, but I've had some really good fire calls, and I've got a lot of good experience during fires. So we've had fires that extend to the attic. We've had, and anytime a fire gets in the attic, it becomes a little bit more dangerous. That building can collapse, and it becomes a lot more of a safety concern. And I've had fires where it's been a simple car fire, but that fire in the car was in a parking garage, which is a semi-enclosed structure. And now the fire in that one car spread to two cars. And it's like, oh man, we have this fire, but it was also on the 5th floor. So we had to climb with our gear to the 5th floor, hoist up the hose, bring up all that gear, start cutting this car apart so we can get into the seat of the fire. There's just a lot of different moving parts and moving steps where, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have those experiences because I learned a lot in how to handle different like chaotic moments, because you have people yelling at you, here's the fire, here's this, and kind of getting it sometimes can be a bit of a distraction, sometimes can be a bit of a help. So I'm just fortunate to have the experiences that I've had, and I'm looking forward to 28 more years of a lot more good experiences. So.
And earlier you mentioned like saving dogs and cats. Now, when somebody's like, oh, my dog's in there, are you like, do you evaluate like, okay, this dog is worth saving? Or are there times where like, do you have to tell people like, this is just not the safest thing to do? Or do you have to go in and save whatever it is they want regardless?
Excellent question. And that goes for not just a dog, but even life.
People,
right?
yeah.
Even if, hey, something else is in there. We have to make that split second decision to say like, hey, we need to evaluate the integrity of this structure. Is this something that I'm going to go into knowing it's about to collapse? We have this thing called LIP, LIP, and it's kind of like what we live by. Life is the first one, life safety. So if any time we get on scene and life safety is our number one priority, if there's family, children, kids, any type of human life or even animal life, that's our first priority. The next is incident stabilization. How can we stabilize this incident? And the last one's property conservation. So we're going to worry about the integrity of that house and making sure that house is safe, but we're going to do that last. So like I said, if our first priority is life, we're going to evaluate first, because we don't want to go in for a dog and now we have a down fireman, right? And then now we have to have other firemen go find that fireman, and now we just risked potentially upwards of 8 people's lives over an animal that might have been dead for a long time, right? But we're not just going to say, hey, oh, that fire in the bathroom, we're not going to go in there because we don't know how dangerous it is. If we know that that fire can be contained to a room or a small section of the house, absolutely. We're going to go in, we're going to force that door open or open that window, go through a window and save that animal as best we can. But we have to do that very strategically. We can't just go jumping into a fire. We have a saying on the fire department: risk a lot to save a lot, risk a little to save a little, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as far as buildings, if you know a building's gonna collapse, what goes into like after that? Like, do you try to like how do you just accept that it's gonna collapse and just take it for what it is, or
A huge part of our job is building construction. When we go through the academy, I thought for a second, I was like, am I a contractor building houses or am I a fireman? I'm like, holy crap. I have to learn so much about building construction for that very reason. I have to know the integrity of this building before I go into it. What type of building is it? How much time do I have when this building is exposed to fire? Am I going to be able to work for hours in this building under fire? Or do I have 5 minutes? So those are the things that we have to all know on the fire ground as firefighters, but also our captains are going to be the ones that are going to be right there saying, hey, let's go make this call. Let's go make this grab. Let's go inside. We have this amount of time and we need to get out. So that's our captain's call, but we are also our captain's eyes and ears. Maybe we see something that our captain doesn't. We have to say, hey, captain, this fire is in the attic. The structural members that are holding this up are burning. So we have to be cautious. And then we have to know, okay, what is it that's burning? Is that a 2x4 piece of wood, blue lamb that's just really thin? Or is that something that's like a strong, sturdy structural member where we have time? Even under heavy fire, we have time. So like I said, becoming a fireman was a blessing for me because I consider myself a jack of all trades, master of none. And that's pretty much what a fireman is. You're able to do a lot of different things. We are mechanics. We're building contractors. People come from all walks of life to become a fireman. So we get experience from every different type of career you could imagine. And it all benefits us for those reasons in those scenarios.
yeah, I mean, I can only imagine like just doing certain things, you start looking at life differently. And like I can only imagine like if you know how a house works, you walk into a house and you're like, okay, I see the weak points here, stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking sometimes I go out places, I'm like, this is a huge fire hazard. I'm making sure I stay close to my exit. I know where my exit is at all times. And absolutely, I'll go into Costco now and you'll see me half the time. I'm just like looking up at the structural members of the building in all different types of buildings, So yeah, it definitely changes your outlook. Definitely changes your outlook quite a bit, but for the better, it's good.
And so another thing about the job is kind of going, I saw you were at Coronado, um, putting on I guess a conference, but like teaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so typically I know like how I respond to like people when they're trying to like educate me on stuff. What's the typical like interaction between you and somebody you're teaching, or instructing or educating? Do you typically sense when they're listening to you and they're like, okay, they're actually taking in what you're trying to tell them, or do you know when they're just like, oh, this guy?
Yeah, like I don't chase people, and I think you kind of knew this maybe from me being a teacher. But like, if you're interested in the career, then hey, I'll help you as much as you want. But I can't want it more than you do. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna sit here as a recruiter to try to get you to join my fire department. That's just not me. But for someone who is a go-getter, who's like, hey, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. Like I've been thinking about maybe becoming a firefighter. I'll give you the base level. And then someone who's like, hey, you know, I really want to do this. I'm gonna meet your energy, basically. You know what I mean? So if your energy's on 1,000, I'll be right there with you and I'll help you every step of the way. You know, but if you're just kind of interested, then I'll kind of tell you whatever you need to, whatever questions you have, I'm gonna answer them. You know what I mean? So I've had guys who say, you know, my parents were firefighters, my this and that was a firefighter. Firefighting is the only thing I want to do. And I say, okay, here's my personal phone number. Anything I can do to help you, let me know. Any questions that you have, regardless of the time, give me a call. And we've had people come and do ride-alongs. COVID has made that difficult for us, but now that some of those restrictions are lifting, we absolutely have people come by the station, visit the fire station, see what a day in the life of a firefighter is like, see if it's something that they actually want to do, you know, and we're more than willing to help people out through that process.
Yeah, I noticed that about like, especially like the trades of being a paramedic, a firefighter, and a policeman, like all three of those, you kind of group together. And they're all like super responsive. Like if I were to walk into a police station, then they'd be like, yeah, come along with us. Same thing with firefighters and same thing with paramedics. Cause like I mentioned, I know the first two, or the second two, especially because like I said, I'm kind of throwing up firefighter, paramedic. Um, and, uh, and like both of them are like, yeah, come in, we can do the same. We can, you know, take you on a day in the life and you can see what it's about. And I think that's really good for a trade like that, because especially now, like a lot of these trades are starting to like decline in a way where, you know, a lot of people are overlooking them, what they actually do, and taking them for granted in a sense. And so I think that's really key to keep them, keep the younger minds interested.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It starts with the young kids, you know. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to those kids and motivating them at a young age. I remember when I was in school, we had firefighters that came and tested our fire alarm systems, did our fire drills, stop, drop, and roll. You know, some of those things I feel like we have stepped away from, and that's something that me as a former teacher want to get back into. So that's why I went to my old high school as well. Went to go talk to kids in different classrooms and try to plant that seed again, get them interested in the fire service. So you mentioned firefighter and paramedic. Those are, for us, one and the same. We have firefighter medics at our job. A lot of the people who get hired are paramedics from the ambulance company and become firemen. Yeah, it's just being a firefighter is just one additional step to that job already. So sorry, Sutton, I just got my low battery warning on my computer here. I'm gonna do my best to slow it down a little bit.
Okay, I mean, yeah, we can start to wrap it up,
Yeah.
but kind of wanted to shift the focus because this is also something that I've been looking into, and it's being a DJ. What goes into
Okay.
that? What goes into that?
You have to have passion for music, passion to learn. There's so much to learn, especially the world of what DJing is now. When I got into it, I was in college. So I started in 2008, but I would say I really started becoming a DJ in 2005 when I was in high school. I would go to parties and I'd be the one who's like, hey, let me get the aux, let me plug in my phone and show you this new song. You know, it's different. Being a DJ is playing what's popular, what people know, but also playing what they don't know yet, what they should know. And that's what makes you a good DJ. And how can you mix and incorporate that throughout the night? Being a DJ is like being a choir director, being an instructor, or it's like being a good writer of a story. The night has an introduction, and then you have this rising action that takes you to a climax. That's called your peak hour, where everyone's jumping, dancing. You have your big songs, and then you have your resolution and your conclusion. Time to go home. If you can orchestrate that or write that story throughout the day, throughout that night, you did your job as a DJ, and people are going to remember you forever. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing because that was just something that started as a hobby for me, and it just progressively grew and grew. And once I got my first opportunity, like I was like, this is what I want to do. I loved it. But for me, it just wasn't long term. I think it was just more of something that I had to check off my bucket list and make me happy. I still DJ though. I still DJ from time to time. Still have fun with it. Still have the whole setup in my room.
So how do you get into that? Like, how do you land your first gig to where you're like, I know you typically open up for like a bigger person, like, you know, like a notable one like DJ Pauly D or someone like that. But how do you get the gig?
I had someone who believed in me. I had a DJ that I knew, someone who already had connections. It's all about connections. That entire industry is who do you know? I spent the better part of a year DJing by myself in my living room, or unfortunately, my roommates had to hear it, you know, at all hours of the night. And then we started throwing little parties, which were really just testers to see if I could do it. I would throw parties at my house and DJ, and people, I could always tell, like, all right, are they feeling it? Are they not feeling it? And eventually, when I got to a point where everybody's feeling it, everybody liked it, and I had an opportunity, hey, we'll give you a shot. We'll hire you for the night. And I called on my friends to come, and that's kind of dictates it right there. Can you survive the night? The first night you're like in survival mode, but you know, if you can keep that party going, keep people's energy up, then hey, maybe this was for you. So you just have to have someone who's willing to take a chance on you.
And what goes into a night of DJing? Because I know it's like a long night some nights.
Hours of preparation, hours. So you create playlists. You get good at your craft. Before you try to get in somewhere, you have to get good at your craft, right? So it's like selling artwork. I can draw you a stick figure and say this is Picasso, but would you buy it? Do you know someone that would buy it? Until you say, hey, let me practice my drawing skills. Let me practice this a little bit more and make this painting something that's more desirable and something that I can sell. And once you're able to do that, then yeah, you'll be fine, because it comes up to how well can you transition song to song. Everyone can just play a song like an iPod, but why you over their iPod? Why you over their Pandora playlist? How well can you mesh two songs together, maybe that have the same beat or have different beats? You know, and I think a big thing today now is being a producer. A lot of the DJs that we see out there are producers that are just DJing their own music. So that's what makes it super challenging. I never really got a whole lot. I kind of dabbled in the production side, making your own beats and stuff. But if you look at any main DJ now, Calvin Harris, Diplo, you name it, they're making those beats. So that is kind of like, I would say, the next level of DJing, or what DJing has become now. So,
and what do you find the best way to engage listeners? Like, what are some go-to songs, some go-to techniques? How do you get a listener like, I like this guy?
Recurring hits. You can find them online, but things that you have to know from deep down. Like, I listen to music. My mom played music in the car. My dad played reggae as a kid. I always listened to songs growing up. So I kept those in the back of my mind. And I was like, hey, I really like this song. I'm going to play it right now and see if other people really vibe with it. You know, me being older, having that experience. I remember some of our hit songs when I was in high school, Mr. Brightside. You know, I was like, you throw that on in a nightclub, this could either go really well or this is going to be really bad. You know what I mean? And sometimes you can't be afraid to take that chance. You know what I mean? If you're not afraid to take chances, take those risks, throw it, do it out there. That's what's going to make people remember you. You know, I'll never forget, I played a song one time in a club and they're like, dang, I've never heard anyone play this song and it goes so well, but I practiced it. I knew what song I was going to play before it, and I knew what song I was going to play after it. And I knew that this one song, regardless of what it was, I was like, this is going to show them like, hey, this is unique for me. You're not going to hear this played this way by anybody else. And that's what I got into. And I think what made me a fairly decent DJ.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What's a go-to song? Like when you're, you know, it's not going so hot, you need to get the crowd pumped up. What's a go-to song?
Mine, well, it's probably different now, but mine was a remix version that I liked of Blow the Whistle by Too Short.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. That gets people going.
That has such an iconic introduction. So before the words even come out, people already know the song. So I could mix that beat with almost any other song, and people are like, oh, I don't even know what this is, but I like that beat. That dum 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 dum, just those iconic bass drops in that song, I feel like always go over so well. And there's so many other songs out there like that. So those songs for me always were a big hit. But you can't exhaust your crowd with those because they've heard that song a million times. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, I know what song this is. I know what song this is. You need to hit them with something that they don't know. And that's what makes you a good DJ, I feel like.
And how do you transition from not, or what goes, like if you play a bad song, do you just switch it mid song or kind of like go into it, or do you like, how's that work and how do you recover from that?
When I first started learning, the key was the chorus. At the chorus of the song where everybody knows, that's where I would incorporate the beat of a new song. And then as soon as that chorus is over, typically 8 bars, you just fade right out of it. And that will be your new song. So every chorus would be a song change. And if it was a really good song and people are still going, maybe I'd go at the second chorus. But sometimes you might play a song and you're like, oh, this is just not going the way I wanted it to. And maybe the dance floor is dying off and you don't have time to wait till the next chorus. That next chorus could be a minute away. Sometimes you got to get creative. You always have to have a plan B and throw that plan B song in there. Maybe start mixing it a little bit sooner or scratching it in. There's tons of ways, and I'd urge everyone to go online and do a little research, just like I did, of different ways to transition through songs. But it's called programming. How can you program the night? What genre of music am I going to play tonight? But also, it's like knowing your audience. Where are you going to go DJ at? Are you DJing at a college bar? Or are you DJing at a Las Vegas nightclub? You know, what songs you choose are going to be different for whatever venue. So I would have what we call crates, or really just playlists of different genres of music. Whether I was going to a country bar, and I've had to DJ at a country bar once, you know, and that DJ'd at a hip hop club or an EDM room versus even a wedding, you know. So all of those different types of places require different types of songs.
Do you have a plan B playlist where like, okay, this song is not too good. Here's just like here's a playlist of songs where I know, like, if not songs are not going too good, I have a plan B for it.
Yeah, I would change the genre. So my plan A was, hey, I'm going to play this type of music. I've gone to weddings before that required a dance club, but I was like, okay, these people are this ethnicity or come from this background, or maybe they like this type of music. I start playing that kind of music and they're like, we've been here already. We want something else. And I'm like, oh, I planned, you know, an hour or shit.
All right, we're good.
Well, I think my battery's dead. I have a black screen, but
Okay.
Where we're at.
It was the plan B songs.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't really have like a plan B list of songs, but I would say I always have a plan B in general. So like, all right, I'm going to switch from this genre, go to this genre. If that doesn't work, here comes plan C. Let me switch up the genres again. And I usually do that throughout the night anyway. You know, you don't want to burden the crowd with the same type of music all day long. You know what I mean? So you want to keep it fresh, keep it revived, but I always have a plan B, whatever that case is, you know, whether it's different song choices, or maybe it's a different way of mixing the songs. You know, maybe something else is going over better. So I just you gotta kind of be versatile, have some tricks, have some tricks in your bag. So.
Yeah. Totally. Well, thank you for joining me. I definitely learned a lot, and I appreciate your insight. And just really appreciate it. I hope to have you on again.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me. It was awesome seeing you. I'm glad to see you're being successful outside of high school now and doing big things, man. I'm looking forward to the future, wherever it takes you.
Thank you. And like I said, I hope to have you back on soon. And I wish you the best of luck in your career.
Same to you, big guy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Thank you guys, everyone, for watching. Link in the description for FNX supplements and everything else. I'll leave your social media links in the description as well. Go check out Mr. Matthew, and thank you guys for watching.
I'm on top of the world, yeah.